Hello and welcome. My name is Mitch Sanders. I'm part of the communications committee for the Wound Healing Society. It is my special uh, announcement to announce that my partner in crime, who normally does this with me, that the Wound Healing Society Awards, Jordan Yaren's wife's having a baby today. So Jordan will be with us on the on this wonderful event to interview Artem Trotsyuk. But Artem, welcome and delighted to have you.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me.
And congratulations to Jordan. I'll follow, see how things are today. Artem, can you talk about your background first? You've got a really cool kind of engineering AI background. Let's start with your undergrad and work your way up.
Work my way up. Absolutely. My background in coming to doing what I do now, I approached it kind of unconventionally. My parents moved from France back in '92, and they kind of popped in California as their means of just picking up a place that they wanted to call home. And in doing that, I went to a public high school and then went to public university. Went to UC Davis for my undergrad. And at Davis, I mean, as an immigrant kid, you have options of being a doctor, a lawyer, a pharmacist, and that's about it. So my option was doctor, and so I ended up going pre med in undergrad. Did the whole shebang of everything that under the gamut of what you think would be helping you to be a successful med school candidate. Let's just say that detour pivoted real quick right out of undergrad. I ended up instead pursuing a consulting job for a bit, doing social media marketing, and then realized that I wanted to get back into my biology roots and didn't know in what area would be most exciting, and ended up, instead of pursuing medical school, pursued a PhD program. Went to Stanford and studied bioengineering and computer science there. It was as close to biology as I could have gotten, but also in a way that I can build things that would address certain problems that people have. And so that's how we got to the PhD realm. In doing my PhD, I was fortunate to be under the supervision of Dr. Jeffrey Gertner and his lab, and he's done a lot of great work in the wound healing space. And honestly, before coming to his lab, I knew nothing about wound healing. After coming to his lab, I am very well versed in wound healing biology and everything that falls into the scope of that. And his motto is very translational heavy. So he likes to build things that are very translatable, that can go into the bedside and people can actually have a tangible impact quickly. And we wanted to have a PhD project for me that was very much that, and something translatable that can go to the bedside faster. And so the work kind of spun out of that, and thinking about how can we use campus collaborations as a means to build a cool thing. And that cool thing became a smart bandage. We started a collaboration with Jenna Bao, who is a chemical engineering professor, and her work is heavy in the material science space. And her with Jeffrey Gertner together, kind of under their supervision, we built the smart bandage, which is now something that we spun out, or we've kind of moved it in from preclinical, validated it in animal models, and are now moving it into commercial development, or at least into human size development.
Artem's won the Excellence in Translational and Regenerative Science Award from WHS. He also won the Wound Shark Award. There were two winners this year, which was awesome. You got your trophy, yes?
Yeah, I did. So Kellen presented on my behalf.
Yeah.
I wasn't able to come in for the actual the presentation itself. So Kellen and I coordinated, and he was able to present on my behalf. And so it was very well received to hear that we were able to get the recognition, both from the Excellence in Translational Research Award and also the Wound Shark competition.
It's a heavy trophy. It cost me more to ship it than to actually buy the trophy, but that's fun. And then you also had a Nature Biotech paper coming out on the same design, right? In 2023 in May as well.
And we did. We had a publication published on, so what we presented work on was on this smart device. Let me see if I can show you.
Yep.
So this device itself was what the Nature Biotech paper was focused on. This is the flexible animal device that we use for, it's about the size of a quarter. I put it in my thumb. It's about the size of a little bit bigger than my thumb. This device is able to deliver 5 volts of electricity continuously and monitor the condition of a wound by measuring impedance and temperature. So we did a huge kind of data collection at the clinic, collected a ton of data from patients in terms of identifying the correct sensors. We went down from 5 sensors using pH, impedance, temperature, different kind of biomarkers, and then figured impedance and temperature are the best 2. From there, integrated that into this flexible device and put this on mice. In testing in the preclinical models, we saw that just by delivering electrical stimulation as well as using sensors, you're able to accelerate wound healing significantly. And so,
how does the algorithm work? So you're sensing pH and impedance, and when do you know when to use the electrical stimulation? Is it right during the inflammatory phase, or how did you design this?
No, it's a great question. So the way that this was designed, so I will kind of show you this again. On the back end here, we have 4 nodes. 2 nodes are for the electricity to pass from one point to another. The wound is centered in the middle of the device itself. So this is all the animal model work that I'm walking you through. And then on the other 2 sides are the impedance sensors. And then right in the middle is where we would have the temperature sensor. The way that this would work is as a wound heals, when the wound is super inflamed, it's going to be warmer to the touch, and intuitively you're going to have a warmer surface area, and so there's going to be a higher temperature. And as your wound heals over time, you're going to have a decrease in temperature. So and then also with impedance is a measure of how much current or electricity is flowing. And so if you have a wound, you're going to have something interfering with the flow. When we're thinking about how to measure the aspect of sensors and using smart sensors with wound care, what we're thinking about is how do you continuously monitor and identify the quote unquote state of the wound. And so what we wanted to do with this preclinical model, the device, is to put this on mice and then let the sensors capture data on what the temperature is and what is the impedance value that is presented. We had some baseline numbers that we entered into the algorithm for it to be able to identify kind of what a wound is versus a healed piece of tissue is, and so that way it would adjust accordingly. And as the device would measure the amount of electricity that would be zapped through the wound per se, would increase or decrease depending on how gnarly or how open the wound was. So the device itself is a semi-continuous one. And so we ended up taking that information. So with the work that Jeff Kurtner went to Arizona, and with that, I kind of went with him to help transition my PhD project, over into the next phase of where we are with the work. And we're able to, with support from the Wound Healing Society and kind of the overall the grant that we got, as well as additional grant funding. We just got some DoD funding to accelerate and design the device that is now going to be human-based. So the device that you're seeing here has a coin cell battery that would allow for it to be worn continuously for up to 5 to 7 days in kind of a forward deployment area. And so it's a pretty cool way to go from something like this to the next size up per se.
Yeah. So the couple of questions around usability for a chronic wound, where I'm worried that I think you may have even presented the year before, and I was concerned that this type of a device could actually cause a pressure ulcer or cause more harm than good.
And so I think that last time when we presented this, there was a concern about this battery component thing. So given that what I tried to do, and I'm doing on this video as well, is to simply show the aspect of what the back end of the technology would look like. But definitely sitting on something like this would be uncomfortable. I agree. And so there is actually really cool flexible battery technology that I recently learned about that you can integrate into a device that allows for it to be super flexible and conform to the wound and not be
the tech we saw at the Boston AWC meeting.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. One of the startup people there was there with me, and she was talking about how they have some flexible battery stuff that they're working on. I'm like, perfect, this is excellent because we need to get some into our device work. So it was actually pretty exciting to kind of see that the field's progressing and addressing this. But I like to show this as a proof of principle to kind of say this was RFID powered by the same thing that powers your wireless charging of your phone, and this is powered with a battery. Granted, this is a prototype to show the same functionality, saying that you can take this outside of a field of a magnetic, like a RFID field, and make it work the same way. So it's pretty cool to be able to see the progression of this go from an idea to an iteration with a bunch of cables to a wireless flexible form factor to a bigger device to something that's human scalable. And kind of next step is to kind of think about how do you make sure that the usability of this is actually something that you can put on people without them worrying about a pressure ulcer or anything else like that.
And I think the next big question, once you get it to the best form and function, is pricing and reimbursement. What's it going to cost? How are you going to get reimbursed?
No.
It's a big
That's
challenge.
a great question. So one of the big things that we looked at early on, about 2 years ago or so, when we started working in this whole space, was to understand that exact question that you just asked me. Because going down and getting new codes or reimbursement codes is quite a tedious path. And even temporary codes and getting those approvals take a while. So what we looked at was stacking of codes that currently exist, and there are codes that exist for capturing like tens of units allow for capturing of electrical stimulation, and so under the stacking of those code types, we would be able to have our sensor integrated wireless device in there.
And what's the pricing look like for that kind of code?
I don't remember off the top of my head, but it was comparable to what was out there. In terms of comparable to standard of care with total cost. And so for us to scale it into something that would be clinically ready, we would need to really demonstrate that it did significantly improve the results as compared to what's their standard of care wise. That's another big thing to consider. And our main indication is kind of really thinking about how can we help both civilians and non-civilians really address this aspect of battlefield and kind of wound care that's in austere environments, and having a smart device, I think, would be a very useful thing there. But also, we don't want to charge an arm and a leg for something that no one's going to buy.
Right.
So,
right.
So the COGS for this are pretty low. What you're looking at right here, just for what I'm holding in my hand of super rough prototype, is roughly $5.
Okay.
So, and this is just an N of 1 prototype. These little tiny ones cost me $1 to make, and so forth.
The tiny ones are still really big to put in a mouse. Did you use diabetic mice, or what kind of mice did you use for the paper?
We used diabetic. We use regular. So we induced diabetes with this with the SCZ model. We have some regular mice as well. It was good enough to be able. The thing is, the device is big.
Yeah,
it is flexible, but the area that actually does the work is in the middle of the device. And so because of that, if I were to cut around to where the actual area of work is happening, it's quite small. But it does look gnarly when you put it on a mouse.
I would think most punch biopsy wounds in a mouse are what 10 millimeters.
8 millimeter, 6 millimeter. Yeah. So it's roughly, I'd say it's roughly about an 8 millimeter biopsy there.
Cool. So lastly, one of the cool things that I really like about you is you think well beyond just the science, and you've been involved in a number of venture outlets. What is the one called that you're involved with right now? Is it R42?
Yeah, R42 and longevity.
Okay.
Both of them. That's the one beautiful part about being in a university that encourages innovation like Stanford, is that you're able to really tap in and understand that taking something translatable out of the lab has a lot of players involved. And so one of the arms is the venture ecosystem and kind of early stage funding, angel investors. for me, it was always the passion of understanding kind of just how does it all work. There was a black box of mystery, just like there's a black box around AI, and I don't, I took a time to learn that. Took some time to learn venture. What's super cool is I can still work in biology, but from different angles. So in the venture ecosystem, it's very heavy on looking at the different startups or different kind of business models that are trying to tackle biological problems. And then you have to think about if you are to scale this, what does that look like? What's the ROI for that? Is there a market for this? And you really get to think about, this whole principle in engineering of, if you build it, you'll buy it. Kind of like there'll be a buyer out there. Don't build something unless you have someone that's going to buy it. And that, I feel like I didn't really fully understand until I saw the flip side of the bio business per se, to really understand if you're going to go out there and be an engineer, that's great. But also, if you're going to engineer a product, make sure you have a buyer at the end of the day. Otherwise, it just becomes a fun passion project, so to speak.
No, agreed. And the other thing that I've learned, and I've been in doing wound care for almost 25, 30 years. And I started with, I actually made my first idea was completely wrong. I made a hot dog package with a little frowning face if you had listeria in the hot dog. And then I realized that after I developed the technology and I wasted $1 million, and I went to Tyson and Purdue and all these great meat processors, and they said, Mitch, this is so cool, I don't want you to know. And I said, what do you mean? They said, I'd rather have you die and then have your family sue me later. What I don't want to have is mom and dad knowing that they took salmonella, listeria home and a fresh chicken, and all of them sue me today, right? And I said, oh crap! So I looked down at my hands and I said, what am I going to do? And I said, well, I'll make a Band-Aid change color if you have an infection. And I developed something that J&J gave me, Ethicon gave me $4.5 million to develop the product. And it took forever to come out. And that's a story for another day. But the cool thing was, you really need to understand, that's why pricing and reimbursement is so important for some of these products. And that's also why you need to think, the one thing that one of my board members once said to me is, promise nothing, deliver more, and whenever you think it's going to cost X, ask for 3 times. There's reasons for that. You can't fail, because if you run out of money, then a down round is worse than getting a divorce. And the other thing is that you have to build credibility. The FDA is getting tougher and tougher, not for necessarily these type of devices, but certainly for any kind of biologic or any animal-derived tissue that's not mainstream. They're really nervous about it because of COVID and because of, and so now everybody's doing chemical characterization. Everybody's doing the path to the biocompatibility package is 2 to 3 times what it was 10 years ago for the same 510K. So it really,
that's the stuff that they don't teach you in school, the aspect of, so all the stuff you just hit nails on the head for is essentially what you learn in the venture ecosystem or in a startup ecosystem. You kind of learn the science is, I guess, that one part, that crux, right? That you're developing something cool, but then 3/4 of the rest of that is it reimbursable? What's the approval process? How long is that going to take? How much money do you need? Is there a market for this? Is there a buyer for this? And when you answer all those questions, and you really still figure out, it's worth it, then go build
it. And when I was developing a diagnostic as a scientist, I thought the panacea was FDA approval. And the panacea was actually adoption, was actually changing clinicians' practice so that they'll use the device. Now, what's cool that we're seeing in the industry is that some of these diagnostics are showing that you can have like better antimicrobial stewardship with the MolecuLite device, or others are showing that, clinicians, they used to use what was called Nerds and Stones, which was a clinical approach to determining whether it's infected or not. The problem is there's only 2 or 3 people in the world that are actually good at that. Most of them can't tell when the wound's infected. And
Yeah.
Dr. Serena has shown that time and time again with all these other types of devices. So I can't tell you, I think what you're doing is amazing. I look forward to following your career, and thank you for doing such wonderful work for the society. And I'd like to make a plug for Wound Repair and Regeneration. Please submit your next paper to WRR. We're always looking for more stuff. So anyway, thank you kindly for this wonderful interview, and I look forward to hosting it and putting it up on the Wound Healing Society website next week.
Absolutely. Thank you so much.
Take care. And if you're going to innovations, let me know if you want to go fishing. I'm gonna get we usually go deep sea fishing, and then whatever we catch, we cook and eat for dinner. The restaurant will cook it for us. So it'll be fun.
Sounds good.
Take care.
Sounds good.
Have
All right.
fun.
Thank you.
See you.